There is something quietly intense about sitting across from someone who was raised by one parent and listening to them describe their childhood. Not with bitterness, though, not always with sadness of some kind as well, but with a kind of quiet certainty about who they are and why. Over the years, working with people from all kinds of family backgrounds, I have found that individuals raised by single parents carry a very particular set of beliefs about themselves, about relationships, and about the world. Some of those beliefs are deeply accurate. Some are stories they have told themselves so many times that they have become personal truths, and you don't have to conclude they were lying because you haven't been there. So let us sit with that honestly today and discuss what people who are raised by a single parent, whether it's their father or mother stays, believe, what they often say, and why they believe so. Number 1. I had to grow up faster than everyone else. This is perhaps the most universal belief among people raised by single parents, and it deserves to be taken seriously because it is largely true. When there is only one adult in a home carrying the full emotional, financial, and logistical weight of a family, children naturally absorb some of that weight, sometimes consciously, sometimes without even knowing it. They remember becoming the emotional confidant for their parent. They remember translating documents, making phone calls, watching younger siblings, or simply learning not to ask for things because they could feel how stretched their parents already were. Psychologists call this parentification, and it shows up frequently in the stories of people from single-parent homes. But here is what matters most. The people who lived this experience rarely describe it as trauma in the way an outsider might label it. They describe it as a strength. They say things like, "I learned responsibility early," or "I know how to handle pressure because I've been doing it since I was 10." That reframing is not denial. It is a genuine psychological adaptation, one that built real competence in real people. The belief that they matured early is not a myth. It is a lived experience. Number 2. I am more independent than most people. Ask someone raised by a single parent about their independence and watch how their posture changes. There is almost always a quiet pride that surfaces. Many of them grew up in environments where self-reliance was not a personality trait, it was a survival requirement. When your parent is working 2 jobs and you come home to an empty house, you learn to self-solve, to cook, to self-soothe, to figure things out without waiting for someone to walk you through them. That belief that they are more independent than their peers holds up under scrutiny in most cases. Research consistently shows that children raised in single-parent households often develop higher levels of self-sufficiency earlier in life compared to children raised in 2-parent homes. The environment demanded it, and they delivered. But there is a quieter side to this belief that does not always get spoken out loud. Some of that fierce independence comes with a hidden cost: difficulty asking for help, discomfort with vulnerability, and a deep-seated sense that relying on others is somehow dangerous. Not because their single parent failed them, but because the architecture of their upbringing trained them to trust themselves above all else. That is worth understanding, not pathologizing. Number 3. My parent was my hero. Many people raised by a single parent hold an almost sacred image of that parent in their minds. They watched someone do the impossible, raise children alone, keep a household together, show up to every school play even after a double shift, and make sure Christmas happened even in the leanest years. That kind of sacrifice does not go unnoticed by children. It gets absorbed deep into their identity. This belief that their single parent was extraordinary is not a myth born of idealization. For a great many people, it is an accurate assessment of what they witnessed, and it shapes how they move through the world. People who hold this belief tend to have a high tolerance for hard work, a deep loyalty to the people they love, and an almost instinctive respect for resilience in others.
Where this belief gets complicated is when the hero image makes it difficult for them to acknowledge the ways in which growing up without a second parent also created gaps. Not failures on the part of their parent, just realities. One person cannot be everything to a child, no matter how heroic they are. People raised by single parents who come to therapy often have to gently learn that honoring their parent does not require pretending everything was perfect. Both things can be true at once. Their parent was remarkable, and some things were still hard. Number 4. I don't need a two-parent home to turn out fine. This is perhaps the belief that carries the most emotional charge, and it is worth addressing carefully. People raised by single parents are often acutely aware of the cultural narrative that positions their family structure as a deficit. They have heard the statistics, absorbed the sideways looks, and been on the receiving end of well-meaning but quietly condescending concern. So many of them develop a fierce conviction, I turned out just fine. And they are right to push back. The research on outcomes for children of single parents is far more nuanced than popular discourse suggests. Yes, certain socioeconomic stressors are more common in single-parent households, and those stressors have documented effects on development, but the family structure itself is not the determining factor. The quality of the relationship between parent and child, the stability of the home environment, and the presence of community support are far more predictive of how a child develops than whether one or two parents were present. People raised by single parents who thrived are living proof of this. Their belief that a two-parent household is not a prerequisite for a healthy, successful, loving life is not a defense mechanism. It is an evidence-based conclusion drawn from their own existence. Number 5. I have a different relationship with love and commitment. This is where things get deeply personal and where I have seen the most variation across individuals. Some people raised by single parents develop an extraordinary capacity for commitment. They watch their parent love them fiercely without a partner's support, and they internalize that love as the standard. They enter their own relationships with depth, loyalty, and a bone-deep understanding of what it means to show up for someone. Others describe a more complicated relationship with intimacy. Depending on the circumstances of the single-parent household, whether the other parent was absent, deceased, or intermittently present, some individuals develop what psychologists describe as an anxious or avoidant attachment style. They may find themselves either clinging to relationships out of a fear of abandonment or keeping emotional distance to avoid the vulnerability that comes with depending on someone who might leave. What matters here is that neither pattern is a life sentence, and neither reflects a flaw in the person. They reflect an intelligent emotional system doing exactly what it was shaped to do. People raised by single parents who understand this about themselves, who can trace the roots of their relational patterns without shame, tend to build remarkably healthy and self-aware relationships as adults. Number 6. The absent parent left a mark, but it doesn't define me. Not every single-parent home involves an absent parent, but many do. And for people who grew up knowing that one parent chose not to be there or was prevented from being there, the psychology around that absence is real, layered, and deserves honest attention. Many people in this situation carry two simultaneous truths. They were affected by that absence, and they refuse to let it become the central story of their life. This is not avoidance. This is a form of psychological resilience that deserves genuine respect. They have often done significant internal work, some of it conscious, some of it simply through living, to arrive at a place where the absent parent's choices say more about that parent than they do about the child who is left. This belief that the mark is real but not defining is one of the most emotionally mature positions a person can arrive at. It acknowledges pain without surrendering identity to it. And in my experience, people who hold this belief tend to carry themselves with a quiet dignity that is unmistakable. What all of this tells us? The psychology of people raised by single parents is not a story about lack. It is a story about adaptation, strength, complexity, and the remarkable human ability to build a whole and meaningful life from whatever materials were available. The beliefs these individuals carry about independence, resilience, love, family, and identity are not delusions or coping mechanisms. They are the honest conclusions of people who have lived something real and made meaning from it. As a psychologist, the most important thing I can say is this: the beliefs of people raised by single parents deserve to be heard on their own terms, without the filter of pity, without the overlay of deficit thinking, and without the assumption that they are searching for something they never had. Many of them found everything they needed, and they built the rest themselves. That is not a small thing. That is, in many ways, the whole point.